Friends and enemies, welcome back, Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. I usually start these Tuesday shows by saying weird day, weird time, but I am burning the candle at both ends because, as you guys know, Len did such a bang up job handling every interview, every Monday night flagship, every tweet, every comment from the haters over the month when I had my newborn. So I'm trying to make it up to him, and I'm doing the best I can here, banging out interview after interview. Breaking a CBP rule tonight. We joke on the show about how we get interview requests from CBC, from certain other Ontario media outlets, newspapers that we talk about sometimes, as well as from politicians. And we typically say no, honestly, because I think most of the time politicians are in a guarded stance, and rightfully so. They are under attack. The barrage is never ending, especially if you're the mayor of a big city. But tonight we're making an exception. Mayor Ken Sim is coming on. He's obviously been in the news. He's become a bit of a Bitcoin darling here. I don't want to use the D word, but I think it's appropriate because of his recent comments around considering Bitcoin as a treasury asset for the city of Vancouver. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other stuff too. Mayor of a big city is a difficult role these days. We dunk on mayors almost every week. Although I will say Ken is in the green room now. Ken, we have never dunked on you, buddy. So you've been doing something right. If we can't find any stories on you, that's a good thing. First, as always, the sponsors, EasyDNS. EasyDNS is a partner of ours, and they've been a partner of ours. Mark, obviously, CEO and founder, great friend to the program. EasyDNS is where you want to be if you're going to start a business. Why? Because they will help you with everything related to your registrar, your domain, emails, email security, domain security, virtual private server stuff, you name it. So whether you're going to do something as simple as sell hats, something as crude as sell pictures of your feet, or something related to Bitcoin, Mark's got your back. So when you start with Mark, you can either buy a website through him, buy a domain through him, or you can port a domain over. Easy in either case. We've actually done both. Both times was smooth sailing, not just because Mark is a sponsor, but Mark will help you too. Mark has helped people from the show in Twitter DMs, no questions asked. Once you have your website there, you set up your emails, which is great. You can set up whatever your domain is, set up your, your favorite basketball player at yourwebsite.com or whatever. Start your product sales. Use that email to take questions. Use that email to talk to your client base. If you're a Bitcoin enthusiast, you may be, if you're listening to this show, all the virtual private server stuff you need to run a Bitcoin adjacent business and do some Bitcoin stuff at home too. So you want to do a virtual private server, Bitcoin node, Nostr relay, BTC pay server, nodeless implementation. We talked about all these things a lot over the years and had many guests that are experts in those different silos. You can do all that with Mark. It's easy. The best part is that if you use our code CBP Media, you get 50% off your first round of buys, money back guarantee. Not that you would ever need it, because Mark is as straight a shooter as they come. Okay, so we're happy to be partnered with them. Flagship sponsor, EasyDNS. Second sponsor, Bull Bitcoin. What is there to say about Bull? They are the most extreme people in the best way possible. They are everyone's favorite Bitcoiners in both official languages. They have the best Bitcoin exchange on the planet. The easiest way for you to buy and sell Bitcoin. Not that you should ever be selling, not financial advice, but these days it's hard to imagine the price is going to drop with all the news around Bitcoin. Including Mayor Sim, obviously talking about adding it as a treasury asset over in Vancouver. Not only that, if you want to live on the Bitcoin standard, you want to buy some gift cards, you want to pay your mortgage, credit card bill, cell phone bill, university tuition, if you're into that. Full Bitcoin has it all with the Bills platform. Non-custodial, never worry about getting rugged. Go there, sign up, give a couple of bits of information, a phone number, an email. Doesn't have to be your phone number. I don't know. $21. Start your Bitcoin buys at Bull. And don't worry about all the things that corporate exchanges may subject you to. Finally, Decentral Technologies, a strong group of Quebecers doing the Lord's work over there, mining of all shapes and sizes. Like I always say, if you want to start Bitcoin mining in your garage at a level that your wife will not notice, these guys are for you. If you are trying to accelerate a divorce process, you can also start a Bitcoin mining operation at a size more appropriate for that goal. They will help you with that too. You want to heat your home, heat your pool. You want to put up a couple of widgets around your house. You want to buy a couple of trinkets. You want to show off your Bitcoin savvy. These guys got you. No promo code. It's a partnership of love. Definitely head over there. Patronize the boys. They have the best stuff around. And of course, happy to be partnered with such a great Canadian company. Mayor Ken Sim is here. Before he was the mayor, he was a overnight janitor at Wendy's. Mayor, how many Frosties have you stolen in your entire life? And how many Frosties did you give away to your friends as the overnight janitor at Wendy's?
Well, it was I worked from midnight to 8 o'clock in the morning. So, and I was in grade 11. So, I didn't work the drive-through window. So I didn't give any of my buddies Frosties. I had a couple. It was actually a pretty good gig. Got to admit.
I bet.
By the way, you can call me Ken. You don't have to call me Mayor Sim. It's
Ken. Listen, I'm happy to call you that as well. I want to thank you for coming on. It takes guts, like I said to you before the show, and like I said during the intro, to come on a podcast like ours. We are unforgiving and critical where it is deserved, but we also give acclaim where it's deserved. And I think you're in that latter camp. Maybe before we get into the Bitcoin stuff, that's obviously why you're here. I want to get to know the man a little bit. So, in doing some research for the show, I noticed that there's a number of stories from local Vancouver news over the last year or so, 2 years or so, about what I would consider to be one of the best things a mayor could do: repurpose an underutilized boardroom as a gym. And do you want to tell me about the in-house gym, available, by the way, to any City Hall staffer that wants it? I think a lot of the city staff could use it if they choose. They may choose to or not choose to. But I love this. And as someone who takes fitness very seriously, you do a better job, no matter what your job is, when you have a clear mind and you've had an elevated heartbeat for some time that day. And working out and physical fitness does that for you. Tell me a bit about that decision. I love that. I want to hear more about it.
Well, it wasn't a story until it became a story. The long and short of it is we have an office that is connected to the mayor's office, and it was always part of the mayor's office, and it was being used as a boardroom. Now, the problem is that boardroom, it's not soundproof, and so you can hear everything, on either side of the door. And we do work on some pretty confidential things, and so we basically moved that boardroom table to another room, literally 15 feet away. I bought some gym equipment and said, hey, look, because we can't really use it for anything else. And we paid for it with our own money. We didn't use a cent of taxpayer money. And then we invited everyone. And we said, look, anyone can use this, including the opposition councillors. And unfortunately, we live in a world of politics, and there's some dipshits. Sorry, did I say that out loud? I'm sorry. You know what? We're going to be kind here. But basically, some people made it a political thing. And, the disappointing thing is, I don't really care. It's not a big deal. But what got lost in the noise was at the same time that happened, Collision, the big conference in Toronto, it was going to leave the country. And we supported a bunch of people and groups in Vancouver to help land Collision. And it's coming to Vancouver for 3 years. It's probably going to be, maybe $500 million to the local economy, 40,000 delegates that come to the city every year, right. Technology people, and it's going to be great for the local economy, but it's going to plant a bunch of seeds. Crickets on that, but 11 outlets showed up to see me sit on a Peloton, right? So whatever, it's politics. It's kind of gross. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's what sells. So you just have to deal with it.
I did love the story. Now I got to say, I don't usually glaze the guests like this, but it looks to me like you could probably move some weight. Can you bench 2 wheels? Are you benching 2 wheels if you get under the bar?
I'm sure I probably could. It wouldn't look pretty, but I don't do a lot of that actually. I do a lot of contrary to popular opinion. I actually ride my bike a lot, so I'm a road rider. And then I do a lot of higher reps, lower weight.
I like it. Listen, I'm all for this. I think that people don't take, like I said, fitness seriously enough, both as a sort of, health issue, but also as a productivity issue. You're better at your job. You're a better husband, better partner, all these things when you're clear-minded, and fitness does that for a lot of people. Now, Ken, you have quite a story. A lot of mayors, especially in bigger cities, typically, at least in Hamilton, we've become a retirement option for failed provincial politicians. And so in your case, you are not a failed provincial politician. You are an accountant and entrepreneur. Give me a bit of your history and why, man, did you decide to get into this politics thing? I can't for the life of me come up with a good reason to ever foray, especially into muni politics. But I want to hear sort of your background and why you made that decision.
The reason you want to is you get a parking pass that works across the city. It's amazing.
That's worth it on its own.
It's awesome. No, okay. You know what? Look, I'm a pretty humble guy, but I think, when you ask me questions later on and we talk about Bitcoin and we talk about the debasement of currencies, I think it's important that your viewers understand what my background is. So, business school grad, went to UBC. It used to be called the Faculty of Commerce. Now it's called the Sauder School of Business. I was a finance grad, couldn't find a job in finance, so I ended up at KPMG. And I love KPMG, by the way. So all the alumni there, don't lose your shit. It's the best experience I ever had. Became a chartered accountant. And then I actually got into investment banking on the mining side. And so I worked in Vancouver. I worked on Bay Street twice. I worked in London, England, in the city, and then back in Vancouver. And then I went into private equity at CIBC Capital Partners, back again on Bay Street, working in technology when the bank was trying to web enable their business. And so did that. I absolutely hated it. I hated the politics around it. I hated, it's just a lot of great people, but kind of a gross industry for me. For other people, it's great. I'm not knocking the industry. It just wasn't my calling. And I always, deep down inside, I was always an entrepreneur. Like I remember, when I was a kid, I found a comic store that would sell comics for 10 cents and another one down the street that would buy them for 25 cents. So it was almost an arb opportunity. And that was when I was in grade 5, right? And so there was always this entrepreneurial spirit in me. And so quit my job and my wife quit her job too. We weren't. She was pregnant. I was along for the ride. And came back to Vancouver and tried to start up a business. And then my wife went on emergency bed rest. And, we had some bad experiences trying to hire someone to take care of her. And so that led to, us starting this little company called Nurse Next Door with a business partner. And actually, I'll throw in some information that's kind of relevant today. When I quit my job, I read this book by David Foote called Boom, Bust, and Echo. And it talked all about demographics, and it had a 5-page section on home healthcare, and sort of put that in the memory bank there. Didn't think much of it. And then when we had the opportunity, or when we ran into the situation, that all came to light. And that's why we started the company. And now Nurse Next Door, which is our company that we co-founded, we're in 4 countries. We have about 400 active locations. We have about 15,000 team members. We're a franchise system, by the way. Mm-hmm. We're in Canada, the US, Australia. We just opened up England. The second company we have is just a really small retail bakery in Vancouver. We have 3 locations. It didn't pan out. We thought we'd have 500 locations, but you know what? That business wasn't really scalable. So, lessons learned. And so that's my background. And it's interesting because I referred to David Foote and Boom, Bust, and Echo. I feel like we're in the same situation where, it's obvious, but you sort of have to do the work. And I remember when we started Nurse Next Door, we used to get chased out of, hospitals. People used to say, how dare you, try to take advantage of people, when they need healthcare. And then 5 years later, they're like, where were you 5 years ago? We were looking at you. So that's a bit of the backstory. One last thing I do want to add, because the question always comes up, why politics? I hate politics. I have no aspirations to be a premier or prime minister. You can pay me enough. If someone offered me like 50,000 Bitcoins to be the premier, I'd say no, because I would hate it. But this being mayor, it's a passion project. And I say that in the most flattering way. Our 4 boys didn't see a future for themselves in Vancouver. And, I didn't want to be someone that whined about it, but did nothing about it. And so we decided to put our tools down and try to, change the direction of our city. And I always say we, because it's bigger than any one person, including myself. And that's what we decided to do. And the great thing is I'm not afraid to be fired. So we get to be exactly who we are. We get to swear sometimes in the media, and we get to do what's right, even though it comes at great political cost, because frankly, we don't give a shit. And I believe if people do what's right, two things happen. One, great things happen, or two, if it doesn't work out, you can still hold your head up high.
Totally.
You can compromise your values. And so that's why we're here today. And that's why we're talking about Bitcoin.
I think that's a great answer.
Landmine.
Yeah. Listen, I think that's a great answer, Ken. And, when I think about politics now for myself and my city, I live in Dundas, which is kind of a suburb of Hamilton here in Ontario. And one of the things I see, I joke about obviously this being sort of a retirement home for failed provincial politicians, but it's true in some respects. And we get people who want to hang out really and just prolong their careers. And so they never really take a stand. I never find out what they think or what they care about or what they're passionate about. And it's fair, I think, to say that describing a trip as mayor as a passion project, that can be a good thing. If the person who is taking that seat is passionate about the city, is passionate about doing the right thing, and isn't concerned about making sure they have a paycheck for life at the taxpayer's expense, I think you fit that bill, Ken. And so I applaud you for that. Now, we have to talk about Bitcoin. This is a Bitcoin show.
Yeah.
Listen, what possessed you to try and become the first city in the country to look at, review, consider Bitcoin as a treasury asset? This thing it's toxic for people who don't understand it. I think for two reasons. One, this is my view. I think the people who don't understand it at 110 or whatever it is, thousand US are probably at least a little bit jealous that they missed it. And two, I think that people are scared somehow that this is still a scam or that it undermines the currency, things of this nature. What made you decide that this is a thing we got to look at for a city? For a city treasury? I don't know what else you guys have on your books, but I can't imagine there's anything even close to this.
No, we have about $3.2 billion of debt instruments that are yielding 88 basis points to just over 5%, which means they're only losing, 10 to 15% of their purchasing power every single year, which is crazy. Like, think about it. Like, we're losing $400 to $500 million a year in purchasing power, and that's the safe investment. So a couple of things. I think your question has to be answered in two ways. One, it's the sound financial thing to do, and it can set us up for the next 100 years. And I truly believe that. In fact, I think if we put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, it'll be the most meaningful thing that not we, but I will personally be involved with in the city during my entire tenure here. So that's the first thing. The second part of the question is, why now? I actually thought we could wait another year or two to do this. But with what happened on November 4th, with Trump getting elected, it just sped up the timeline, because all of a sudden it became, it was thrown in everyone's face with a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And it's not that we're going to miss it, but we'll miss a big part of the opportunity. Because I think, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. And so I think the technology is already proven, and it's going to happen. So I think, if you're not in that space, it's, really, it's either going to zero or it's going to infinity.
Yeah.
And so it's not going to zero. And by the way, everything I say, disclaimer, I'm not giving financial advice. I'm not qualified to. I'll lose my letters as a CA. So I'm not trying to. So everyone, don't trust, verify. But the thing is, if we're looking at, doing what's right for the city of Vancouver, and if you actually think that, let's make up a number in the short term, in the next 10 years, Bitcoin's going to go to $10 million. Wouldn't you rather buy it at 100 grand versus 2 million?
Sure.
Right. Like, all of a sudden we get 100 times leverage, or we get 5 times leverage.
I think that's a fair point. You're in a realm where there's, we talk a lot on the show, Ken, about the reasons why people don't adopt Bitcoin as a treasury asset, the reasons why advisors or professional accountants or anyone who's lettered in the financial realm, what is the rationale for them not adopting Bitcoin or buying Bitcoin as a treasury asset or taking Bitcoin for payments? And oftentimes we come up with basically one reason that rules them all, and it's career risk. And so you're in a realm there where there's significant career risk as well, mostly because politicians, especially at the municipal level, at least in my view, it's hard to make hay with a good move, but it is really easy to get attention for a bad one. And when you talk to your colleagues, those who are aligned with you, wearing the same jersey, and those who are wearing different jerseys, what are the most common rebuttals you hear for this? I mean, this is still very new. It is in its infancy, this consideration. What were some of the things you considered before you went public with this? What were some of the issues you heard from your peers? Was this always going to be something you did regardless of the feedback, or was the feedback positive enough that you said, you know what, let's go with this. Let's give it a try.
No, like I said, this came at great political risk. So in Vancouver, and in Canada for that matter, we have a weak mayor system where I'm just one of 11 people in that chamber. And so we need the votes. Now, I know, I think like in Ontario, you guys changed it a little bit where you have some mayors have superpowers, like about 50 of them.
By superpowers, do you mean that they can take like taxpayer funded trips to foreign countries under the guise of trade trips? Is that what you mean?
No, any mayor can do that. That's not. By the way, I pay for all my own trips.
Thank God.
No, you know what? There are going to be colleagues all over Canada who shit on me after. But no, by that I mean I can't approve a budget by myself.
Right.
Whereas I believe Mayor Chow in Toronto can. Like, she has to defend it and what have you. There's a process, but basically, it's her budget, as an example, to a greater extent. So, and I do want to defend, my council colleagues, the people on my team, because we agreed to a 94-point plan when we ran. We all agreed to it, and they've been great. Whenever something comes up on that 94-point plan, we do it. I also don't believe in surrounding myself with yes people. And so, the great thing when you have people that think differently, they won't necessarily agree with you. The crappy thing about that is sometimes you don't get stuff passed. And so that's all leading up to our counselors are at different stages of their journey on Bitcoin. And like most people, like I started as a pessimist. I totally didn't believe it at all because I hadn't been, I didn't do the work. And so that's a long way of saying, this is really a 3-step process, and I'll put it out there for everyone so everyone can see what we're working on. There's going to be no surprises. The first part was just passing a motion saying, let's explore it. And I can tell you it was challenging because, to give people context on any other motion, like to say, let's explore something. It's like, it's a no-brainer. It's like, we're not committing anything. We're just like looking at it. But because of the negative connotations around Bitcoin and because of the reward system, where politicians just get absolutely hammered, there was a little bit of apprehension amongst some of our own party members. We did get it passed. The second part is actually getting the report back and then passing that report. And so hopefully the report comes out and it's well informed. And if it's not, I'll take the political risk of filing an amendment and saying, no, this is what, I'm going to make a stand and this is what we want to do. And, we'll vote on that as well. But either way, the race really is on to get our people educated so they can make an informed, like they can complete an informed report, and then getting all the counselors inside of our party and outside of our party up to speed so they can make an informed decision on how they vote. And so once we do that, the third leg, and stop me if I'm boring the crap out of you, but the third leg is getting the provincial government up to speed as well, because we're governed by this thing called the Vancouver Charter, which means if we do agree to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet, in this example, the provincial government has to approve it. And they've openly said that they're not going to approve it at this point in time. They have a lot of other things that they're working on. And so, we have a good working relationship with the provincial government. So we'll take them at face value on that one. But like I said, we didn't follow this motion to virtue signal, get a couple of votes and try to, say, hey, we understand technology. No, This is one where I'm only going to speak for myself, not the other councillors, because I can't speak for them. This is one where I'm willing to die on the hill on. And if that means I don't get reelected, that's okay. This conversation is way too important.
I think those are, first of all, those 3 legs are, it's an important sort of explanation about the process around these things. I think in Bitcoin, God, especially in the Bitcoin media space and on Twitter, everyone expects things to happen quickly. There's I think a shortcoming in Bitcoin, especially for people who have been around a long time, this idea that because I get it and it's sort of clear to me, you should get it and it should be clear to you. And if you don't, well, have fun staying poor, right? The old meme. Yeah. I think that, we've done a poor job in the Bitcoin space. Again, I'll speak for myself, especially early on in my sort of journey, just dismissing people who didn't understand it. Now I try and help curious people, though I don't evangelize the way I once did. And I think that you guys are going down a similar path. Now, there's a good question in the chat here. This has become national news, I think, in a lot of ways. Maybe I'm in a bubble a little bit. Have any other mayors reached out to you? Have any other city councilors from other places reached out to you and said, hey, Ken, this is a good idea. I'm also a Bitcoiner, or I've also been thinking about this, or my 20-year-old kid is bothering me about this stuff. Is this something I should be looking at? Or are you just sort of on an island here in Vancouver and no one's talking about it with you from other jurisdictions?
From a political perspective, and I'm going to apologize if I'm missing someone, but no.
Wow.
A lot of people have come out of the woodwork. There are a lot of us that were closeted. Whole communities are coming out, and not just in Canada, but around the planet who want to help out. But not a lot of politicians. I know, and I don't want to mention the jurisdiction because I don't know if they're doing this in confidence or not. There's one other jurisdiction in BC we know was looking at it, and so we don't know where they are. But I think it's unfortunate. It's a scary topic. It's a scary topic, and if you're a politician, so I get it.
Yeah, I guess so. But you guys had, if I remember correctly, a number of what I consider to be high quality Bitcoiners. I remember, I think I saw a friend of the show, Scott Deedles, among others, address your city council during, I guess, the preliminary phase. Yep. And talk to council about the reasons why you adopt Bitcoin. It's this idea that Bitcoin is not meant to replace these other treasury assets. You don't have to do that right away. You may do it in the long term. You may find that position sizing makes a difference and all these things. But the point is that the other assets are, as you mentioned, on purpose at this point, losing ground in terms of purchasing power, in terms of preservation of wealth and all these things. Well, Bitcoin's function is to do the opposite, again, on purpose with very deliberate intent. We're not going to give up purchasing power. We're not going to be debased. Do any of those addresses or any of those short comments stick out to you? Things that you think landed with your colleagues? It's a different crowd than I'm used to talking to, and probably in a lot of ways, honestly, Ken, a different crowd than you're used to talking to on topics like this. Any of those statements or comments that you remember really land? And, maybe the second part of the question, what is the best way to talk to a city councilor about this stuff? And I asked that for 2 reasons. This is a long question now, but see if you can remember it all.
Yeah.
The reason it's hard with a city councilor is because, you're not that long in the tooth. I don't think you're even 50 years old, if I remember correctly. And when I look at municipal politics, it seems to skew a little older for some of the reasons we talked about earlier. It's a hard topic to discuss with someone my age, let alone somebody who's, 55, 60, 65. What is the best way to handle that crowd on this topic?
Yeah. So thanks. You should be in sales, man. I'm 54. So
hey, nice.
No, I think, with all the different counselors, different things resonated. For example, we have this big pool, Kit's pool, and, to heat it costs a lot of money. And having a Bitcoin miner actually, basically change the model where you can actually mine Bitcoin, use the heat the pool, and turn a cost center into, a money generator. Right. A lot of people are like, wow, actually never thought about it that way. It's actually good for the environment too. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think, I don't know what your journey was like, but all of a sudden, when you have all these things hit you, then all of a sudden it kind of clicks. And so I don't think, I still think we have a lot of work to do for people to go from the, pessimist to curious to evangelist. And so, that's the work. What resonates with counselors? I really do think, and I say this respectfully, we have to think of the reward system that we as voters create. So it's not even their issue. But if we can educate people and have the whole community come out and show why this is a good thing and why it actually matters, and the community is going to be vocal and they're going to vote their conscience. I think that goes a long way in swaying, people that are running for office again. And what was the third question?
Well, it's sort of in the same vein. I think you answered it there, but is there, a gap that you find when you're talking to your peers between maybe your younger peers and some of them that are a little bit older, you just can't make the same sales pitch because of, I don't want to be insulting, but like this sort of technical lack of understanding, right? Or lack of technical understanding, lack of technical literacy in some regard for things like, the difficulty adjustment or decentralized networks and things like this. These are things that for me, I grew up using Casa and torrents. And so like, I have a point of reference that I can draw on, but these older folks, there is no sort of maternal language, right? Everything they're hearing there's no relative term for them. And so it's a different conversation to have.
Yeah, I think, and this is just a general comment, it's not even about Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
I think if you can explain it to a 10-year-old kid, you go a long way in being able to, get people to understand it. And I say that respectfully. It's all in the beauty and the simplicity. Like think of a kid that uses an iPad, way back in the day when iPads were a thing, like a 2-year-old kid could just figure it out. So the beauty's in the simplicity. And I think if you capture the emotional side of things, you go a long way. So how do we do it? Well, forget about Bitcoin for a sec. Do you feel that things have gotten more expensive over the last 5 years? Right?
Yeah,
like
of course.
The groceries have basically doubled. CPI, I don't know whose CPI is running at 3% because my basket isn't 3% a year.
It's only 3% if all you eat is like honeycomb cereal and glue. But if you eat anything else,
but I think they've actually I could be wrong here, but I think they've taken food and energy out of the CPI because it doesn't. Right.
Too volatile. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and people understand that. It's like, yeah, I feel that. Right. And you go, okay, well, great. So the first thing, forget about Bitcoin. If you don't even understand what your problem is, the problem we're trying to solve, let's educate you on that. And so our currency is getting debased, right? I look at the States and they're printing they're adding $1 trillion every 100 days to the debt. Yeah. Like I look at Elon Musk and for him to bridge that $2 billion or $2 trillion budget deficit per year, he has to cut 2 of the following 3: the military budget, all the interest on the debt, and Medicare and Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And so if you cut the military budget, guess what? The whole world order changes. If you don't pay the interest, you default on the debt. And if you cut Medicare and Medicaid, you probably have a civil war in the US. And you have to do 2 of the 3 just to get to even. And you still have $36 trillion in debt. The debt's already insolvent. And it's getting worse. And so when people and I think people understand that. And so once you describe that problem, then it's like, all right, well, what's a good store of value? You can look at gold, and we can talk about gold. And remember, I was in mining, so I actually like gold.
I'm Italian, so I like it too.
Yeah. And gold's like a really shitty analog version. It's basically a fax machine compared to an AI bot, and that AI bot's Bitcoin. And you know what? I'm still like, I was orange pilled about 5.5, 6 years ago by Jeff Booth. He's a friend.
Luxury.
Yeah, no, he's a great guy. He's just a great human being. So what you see is what you get with him. But it's now I forgot what I said. I'm so enamored with Jeff.
The gold.
Oh yeah. I'm on my journey still, and I continuously learn. And something just hit me literally last week. We all know that Bitcoin's finite, like 21 million. And we all knew that, like, it's the only thing that's finite on this planet. You can't think of another thing. Like, it's the greatest invention. I knew all that for years, but it really hit me just in the last week. What does that actually mean? That's fucking massive.
It's huge.
It is huge. And I had an epiphany just this past week. And so, if we're still discovering new things, what about the person who, hasn't even started their journey and all they see is what they see in the media and how this is bad for the environment? It's only used for organized crime and it's a Ponzi scheme and it's a bunch of code. Like, you can't even touch it. Doesn't mean anything. And there's, another 10,000 shit coins out there or 15,000 or whatever. Like, that's the world they live in. So, it's a fascinating journey.
Do you, I'll ask you sort of a mayor facing question here as opposed to a Bitcoin facing question. I know, in Hamilton, we have a lot of the same problems Vancouver has with stuff like substance abuse and stuff like, drug and crime. And, we've got a housing crisis here. The housing here is just unbelievably expensive, Ken. And I know Vancouver, we don't hold a candle to Van City in that regard.
Yep.
I could imagine some of the blowback you get from certain parts of your constituency about, why is Mayor Sam looking at Bitcoin treasury asset nonsense when I can't afford my rent and my landlord won't repair my unit and my kids, can't get proper health, these sorts of things that are really, they're valid concerns because they're so tangible for people's lives.
Yeah.
You and I are making the argument that Bitcoin is a thing that can help you get out of that spiral over a, medium term, longer term time horizon if you choose to invest in it. But how do you square the circle for those people? One of the things we talk about on the show, for example, is it's not that people don't want to find a solution, Ken, to all these things. It's that they just don't have the time or the bandwidth. And it's frustrating when someone else tells them that they've been wasting their time or that they have to spend what little time they have finding out about this new thing. How do you talk to those folks? That's a difficult conversation, right?
Yeah, it is. So wow, there's about 16 things I want to add there. So first of all their concerns are completely valid, right? Like I think people have to understand, it's one thing if you can sit here and say, it's great, I'm not worried about my job and get fired. My background, and I know this background's, a lot of people have this, and this isn't like a sob story. It's just to give context. Son of immigrants. My parents immigrated here in '67. My dad struggled to find a job. He was an entrepreneur, and he wasn't he was an incredible father. He wasn't the greatest entrepreneur. And so my mom was a primary breadwinner. She was a typist in typing poll at BC Packers. So basically raised 5 kids on a secretary's salary. I went to 5 elementary schools in 7 years because my parents couldn't make rent. Okay, so that's context. And so forget about like Bitcoin in the future, thinking about 20, 30 years, setting up the city for the next 100. There are a lot of people who are like losing their minds and they're terrified because they don't know where their next meal is coming from. I think people have to empathize with that, when they're making decisions. So the answer is we're doing both. Right. We're working on speeding up the permitting process so homeowners or home builders can build more homes faster and they don't have to be burdened with all the holding costs and all this stuff. Yeah. We're making the place safer by adding more police officers we still have to get to the root cause of why the streets aren't safe. And it's a lot of mental health issues or substance use disorder. And so let's treat it as a healthcare issue. Making it easier to run a business in the city of Vancouver, reducing, getting our financial house in order. So, we don't have to increase property taxes beyond the rate of inflation. And we're setting up our city, regardless of Bitcoin, to do that and then some. So
how are you doing that? I got to hear this. That's a great talking point that I have not heard any politician make. How are you guys doing that?
Look, I'll preface this with, we never try to be the smartest people in the room. If I'm the smartest person in the room, that room's in a lot of
room. Yeah,
wrong room. And we have amazing people throughout the city of Vancouver. So on the budget, for example, we actually had, we set up a mayor's budget task force. And we had 58 incredible individuals, leaders in business, chartered accountants, CFAs, people from the left, people from the right, people from the middle, First Nation involvement. A bunch of students at UBC, and they ripped through our financials and they gave us a playbook. It's literally that simple. We crowdsourced the solution. And so, and we're not getting political. We're just like, we don't give a shit where you come from. Help us fix this city and make it better and have your say. And so that's one of the many things we've done. We had a couple of projects, our little thing called the Stanley Park train. It was about to be shut down, and it would have taken us forever to get the funds allocated and the know-how to fix it. So instead, we basically made some phone calls. We got an expert on trains to come in, and he gives advice. And then we got 10 people, I should say, to cut $100,000 checks and donate it to the city to fix it.
Beautiful.
And by the way, our people at the city of Vancouver, they're absolutely incredible. They just are working in a broken system. And so with that support, they were able to do amazing things. They want to do amazing things. So that's how we do it. And we live in the same environment as regular folk in the city of Vancouver and in Ontario. And you can see the debasement, the rate of debasement is in excess of what we can, increase property taxes by. And so at some point, we're going to come to a head. And if we don't do something about it, our city will not work. And it's enough to go, look, we're going to, triage the current situation. But if that's all we do, we're wasting everyone's time because this thing's driving off of a cliff. And it's not because people aren't smart. It's just like this whole thing's set up for our city to lose. And so, and people to lose as well.
Yeah.
And so I want to make sure that we can afford to pay our police officers and our firefighters and our sanitation engineers and, our bylaw officers and our park team members a living wage and then some. But if we don't, if our money's losing 15% a year, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you guys have some of the most beautiful parks. My wife and I went to British Columbia for our honeymoon years ago, and I got to say, I've seen some pretty cool stuff in my time. I've been fortunate, and I still think that the Cathedral Forest or whatever the name is with the giant trees out there in BC. What is that? God, I can't remember what it's called, but that was like the most incredible thing I've ever seen.
Like Clickwalk Sound. You're not talking about in Vancouver. You're talking.
No. Though we did spend time in Vancouver too and enjoyed parts of that as well. Not every part, but some parts. That was before you were the mayor, so I won't pin that on you.
Yeah.
It's interesting, when I think about big cities and when I think about how big cities now they're operating at a scale that I don't think anyone saw or even considered to be possible 50 years ago. And yet you're stuck using a lot of the same systems, whether it's transportation, transit, roads, schools, hospitals, or your budget and tax receipts. And so I'm curious, we're talking a lot tonight, Ken, about problems with currency debasement, and you are not causing those problems. You could argue the province also not causing those problems. So the natural next question is, do mayors of a city that's as relevant and as large and as prominent as Vancouver or Toronto or Ottawa, of course, but others across the country, do they interface with the feds and say, look, there's too many holes in the boat for us and I'm running out of thumbs and I need help because the currency is really causing me problems that I can't fix unless I adopt a new treasury asset. And, I can't imagine you're the only mayor expressing these concerns, even if the solution being considered by other jurisdictions is different. Do you guys talk to the feds about this? What is the attitude when you speak to Ottawa about these problems?
Yeah, we speak about it, and look, just being really blunt, I don't think things are going to change, and we're not going to whine about it. We just come to the realization it's like, all right, we're going to take, we're going to control the controllables and do it on our own. I just think of, like, what's the federal government going to do?
My opinion is there's nothing they can do, but maybe you have a different one. Yeah, I guess not.
Like it's. I think the only play they can, once again, not giving investment advice, but if the Canadian government just printed a bunch of money and just bought Bitcoin and turned fiat crap into a hard asset, maybe we have a chance. But you take a look at the numbers in the US and what I just described, you can apply it to Canada. Same thing, it's basically the same equation. And demographically speaking, our population is aging, so there's going to be less people in the workforce contributing tax revenues, and there's going to be a bigger drain on the system just from, and that's why you're seeing our healthcare system crumble.
Totally.
And so, what are they going to do? I don't see an out for them. And so we don't complain about it. We've come up with our solution based on what we can do. And that's why adding Bitcoin to the balance sheet is so important, in my opinion. And hopefully the city staffers, they come to the same conclusion and the councillors vote for it, and then we can convince the province. So we're not looking for a handout. We just, want to run our city, and give us the opportunity to run the city, or then bail us out if you don't because I can tell you one thing, if we don't solve this, get someone I'd love to hear someone come up with a sane solution as to how we can avoid this if we don't, put our money in gold or Bitcoin in.
Ken, come closer. Come closer.
Yeah.
Nothing stops this train. Okay, nothing stops this train.
And that's just it. So the sad part of it, but the great part of it is, I truly believe that in whatever, be it 5 years or 7 years, we're all going to be on the same program. So now the opportunity, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Mm-hmm. So why don't we choose to join sooner and reap all the benefits of getting in that much earlier?
I think it's a great idea. Ken, you've been a great guest. I have 2 questions left here that I don't ask every guest, but it seems to me that you will have good answers for these questions. And it's 2 things that I deal with in my personal life now, and a lot of Bitcoiners, especially the men, deal with in their personal lives. And it's, how do you keep your wife sane when all you want to talk about is Bitcoin? And do you have any tips for preserving your marriage when every time you pull up Twitter, you just want to share a good meme or another good Bitcoin win? What does your wife think about all this? Is that too personal a question? I don't know, but I think it's
not
interesting.
At all, but I don't know. I can say with a lot of confidence, I'm probably the wrong person to ask for a relationship advice. But yeah, if you want to go down that deep, dark rabbit hole, no, you know what? Like a lot of relationships, there are lots of ups and downs. But it's funny, actually. Tina's been listening to a bunch of podcasts.
Love it.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, no. Well, you know what it's like once you get deep into it, you find religion and you can't shut up.
That's right.
That's us as well. But a lot of people are getting enrolled in the conversation, and I don't actually really care how they get enrolled. A lot of people, they see the price going up and they don't want to get left behind, so now they're asking the questions. So great, and yeah, we do spend some time apart as well. So that's the marriage saver.
Listen, you don't have to tell me. I we were talking before the show. I've been doing this show now for 4 years-ish, 5 years, maybe, I forget now. But one of the reasons I started is because my wife was just sick of talking to me about it. So I picked up with my now business partner and said, we got to start doing this. So our wives are happier. Your wife's probably happier to have you talking to me than talking to her. Fantastic. Other question, Bitcoiners are all sort of, for the first time now, coming into a little bit of financial security. I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners who are around my age and a little younger. I'm 37. I'll be 38 this year. I just had my first child a few months ago.
Congrats,
and man. Thank you. And I'm curious, you have 4 kids, I think I heard you say.
Yep.
And I want to know, in a world where the traditional institutions and traditional investment vehicles and traditional understanding of how the world works is starting to erode a bit, what advice do you have for parents talking to their kids about things like Bitcoin, talking to things about parents to their kids about things like investing, about things like, should you be going to a university? Should you be doing these things? Are these conversations that you guys are having or thinking about having, or are different than you imagined 10 or 15 years ago, thanks to all the things that have happened in the last decade-ish?
Oh man, I'm going to get in trouble now. And by the way, I love I'm a very proud alumni of our university. And,
never a good way to start an answer, but okay, I'm looking forward to this now.
I do think, we're to a certain extent, we're teaching the wrong stuff. And I say it respectfully. I think of, I think of finance, for example. We might have had this whole thing wrong. like I remember seeing a podcast or like a little short video. This professor from Stern, and he understands Sharpe ratios and finance and all this stuff. And then you've seen the same one, right?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I've heard a lot of guys talk about Sharpe ratio in the last 5 years.
Yeah, and then he basically said, yeah, no, this is it. I guess his epiphany was during the pandemic. He saw that the S&P return basically matched the increase in empty money supply.
Spot on.
And then he started looking around, and it's like, wait a sec. Oh my God. Right. I've been teaching all this stuff, and basically it's because of how much money is being printed. And he ended it with buy Bitcoin. But no, what I would suggest is be curious, right, and question everything. And I'm gonna, this is one of Jeff's analogies. Imagine you have your Galileo, and you look through the stars with a telescope, and then you're like, oh, wait a sec, we've had this all wrong, right? And then you start talking about this to all your buddies, and they're like, oh, where the hell did this come from? You're an idiot. Galileo, who are you? Right. And so the point is, be curious and always question. And look, I know people that are trapped in the current financial system right now. There's a lot of fear and apprehension, and there's a lot of people have given up. And I'm sure it's the same thing in Hamilton, Halifax, Toronto, Fort St. John, Nanaimo, where it's like, I can't afford to live here. I'm going to have to move away somewhere. When it's every single like sort of medium and large size town, not just in Canada, but across the planet, you really got to question what's going on. It's not a supply and demand thing. Like in Vancouver, we have a supply and demand issue. Don't get me wrong. And
that's one piece of it, though. One piece of it.
One piece. Like, I don't know if you, I gave this analogy on the Natalie Burrell show. So someone told me that housing prices haven't changed in Vancouver since 1930, when priced in gold. Mm-hmm. So I had to prove this to myself. And so I went back to 1995. And in 1995, the average house price in Vancouver was $500,000. And at the end of 2022, it was $2.43 million, or it's gone up. It's gone up about 383%, or whatever that number is. But when priced in gold, it went from 958 ounces to 957 ounces. It remained flat. Now, look, people can say I cherry picked those numbers. It was just by dumb luck those numbers came out. But if I were to go over the same period and strip out the outliers, the couple of high ones and the couple of low ones, the range is pretty tight. It's only gone up or down about 11% in terms of gold, but in terms of dollars, it went up. And the problem is, our salaries, our wages have not gone up by the same rate. And so the governments are basically reallocating wealth through the debasement of currency. And that's why people are suffering right across this country and right across this planet. And when you wake up to that, then, start looking for alternatives, be it buy a boat, which surprisingly enough went up during the pandemic, which is dumb. Didn't go up, our dollars went down. Gold, which is, the second best hedge. And then there's Bitcoin, which is, in my opinion, 1 trillion times better than gold. So whatever.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer, I think. Do you know what BOAT stands for, by the way, the acronym BOAT?
Bring out another 1,000 or something.
Yeah, bust out another 1,000. Nice. No one really knows that one. That's like I thought that was really well known, but I'm glad you knew it. Maybe we'll finish with this. I haven't asked this question in a long time, but we had Jeff on the show a while ago. Yeah. He's a friend of the podcast, and I've met him in person a couple of times. I asked him once upon a time, when we were sort of in our infancy, what we used to do was punch up the chain with this last question to try and get guests that otherwise would not have given us any attention. I don't have to do that now, thankfully, in no small part to people like you and listeners and viewers. Yeah. But I'm going to ask it now because I think it'd be fun the next time you see Jeff. Can you beat Jeff in a 40-yard foot race, you think?
If I punched him in the knee.
Come on.
He's like a lot taller than me. And I don't know. It's not something we've ever sort of brought up. But maybe we will now.
I'm gonna ask him next time I see him. I'm gonna send him this clip. Mayor Sim, Ken, you've been fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better. No, man, it was my pleasure. Really, like I said, looking into a bit of your history, the things that you're doing in Vancouver, the attitude with which you approach a job that oftentimes has people, really expressing their most timid tendencies. You've done the opposite, and I think the people of Vancouver should appreciate you for that. Canadians should appreciate you for that. And I know that our listeners and viewers will appreciate that about you. Before we go, tell people if there's stuff they can look at, ways to support or share the Bitcoin mission in Vancouver. The floor's all yours, buddy.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. So thank you very much. And thanks for all the work you do by spreading the word out. Yeah, no, your viewers, they can help Vancouver. Like literally, if you're in Vancouver or the region, support us, get out, spread the word, get your community involved, reach out to the councillors, reach out to the members of parliament and the MLAs. And more importantly, like from a purely self-serving perspective, please do that if you want. But this isn't a competition as well. And so we actually want to spread the word and help all the other cities across Canada. Because I know even if every single city in Vancouver got onto the Bitcoin standard, it's not going to move the needle. And you know what? Wouldn't it be great if all our cities could set themselves up for the next 100 years? And so if Kelowna or Nanaimo or Pickering, Hamilton, whatever, if they need help, if that's the community you live in, do the same thing. And if any of those communities want help from us, we're literally one phone call away, and we'll help you, and we'll share all our knowledge, and we'll rally around you as well, because it's important. We're talking about the future of our cities and our communities and our country, and it's a battle worth fighting.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Mayor Ken Sim, thanks everyone for listening, watching. We'll see you next time.